Well, hello sourdough sisters of Yamin. It's the 8th of January on a very cold day in England. We've just had a flurry of snow and I'm going to take you through day one of beginning a sourdough starter. I'm going to do two in case you can't get the flour. I'm using English flour here. This is rye. In Israel I'd use Steibel number 7. And this is a wholemeal, so I'm going to do two different ones. I'm curious, in case you can't get them, I'm curious myself to see what happens starting from scratch, to see if there's any difference. What I've got, you can make it in a variety of jars. This is a good one, because it's straight-sided, the dough won't get stuck anywhere, the paste. So if you can get a jar like that, I'm sure you can tip out the peppers and find a use for them, clean up the jar. Otherwise I've got an extra large, whatever this jam is called, you'll know what it is. Bon Mammon jam, it's an extra large one. There is a smaller one, but I'm always scared it's going to overflow if it starts growing. The Council of Perfection, which you don't need, I don't use it in Israel, I use old jam jars in Israel, is the Vec jar. The reason this is on is this is a loose jar. When you start making the starter, you just do the lid very, very gently on. You never screw it up tight because it can potentially explode, so you need room for it to overflow. It's never happened to me. Might have happened to you, I can't remember. And this one obviously is just loose fitting. So I'm going to start by using the King Arthur flour method. It's basically, you just have to remember it's equal parts flour, equal parts water. They use 113 grams. I think it's a little bit much. I'm going to try to stick to 100 grams flour, 100 grams water. I use bottled water because my tap water, we're very, very near the reservoir and it's very chlorinated and basically it won't grow. So if you don't use bottled water, I suggest you start with bottled water. I know it's not very ecologically sound, but just as a one-off. If you don't use bottled water, use filtered water or boil your water and leave it overnight because lots of the chlorine settles to the ground. But scientifically, there's still chlorine that stays in the water. So here we go. Come around here so that you can see. I'm going to tear it. You can measure, you can weigh the jar, but basically I set it to naught. Tear it to 0, right? And now I'm going to add to this one 100 grams, give or take. Really, it's not like a sponge cake. It really is very forgiving. I'm going to, this is the rye flour. I'm going to do, give or take 100 grams. It's a lot. It's much more than I usually use, but it is how I began my first sourdough because I didn't know any better. That's about 100 grams, and I'm going to pour in 100 grams of water, and I may well get it wrong. It suddenly goes up from nothing. So basically 100 grams, which I make it up to 200, so it's basically equal, even Stevens. 200, if it goes through, it goes wrong. There we are, 202 grams, 201 grams. It's not the end of the world. You can use anything. I suggest not a spoon because it gets caught in the bowl of the spoon, the dough you're making. I like a chopstick because it doesn't get stuck, and you just basically stir it up. Stir it up. Just, can you see me stirring it up, darling? Yes? Got a kitchen towel here. Rubbish around the edges. All right, so you try to do the best you can to mix it in. Then I'm going to rest that on some kitchen towel and I'm going to give it a scrape down. Doesn't matter too much to get the loose flour that's around the edges of the jar. It could be any small spatula that fits. And there's lots of loose flour there, so I'll give that another good old stir. And actually, that's it. You can, when I first began, I used to really clear it down a lot. Now what I'll do is I'll get some kitchen towel, simply because I don't want wet from the tap, and give it a good old clean round the top. Pop the lid on. Just a minute, pop the lid on now. You want to know where you are. That's very uneven, but there we are, a doubled up elastic band, roughly speaking. And because it's cold here, I'm putting it on a seedling mat that I have. I'll tell you what those two jars are at the end. This is the new starter. In fact, I'm going to get a pen, wherever my pens are. Right, I've got a Sharpie. Because I'm doing one with rye and one with wholemeal, I'm going to put NS rye. NS for new starter rye. And that sits there for 24 hours before you need to do anything else. And now I need to do another one. Right there. Come over here. I'm wiping clean my chopstick, wiping clean my spatula. Re-tear it to 0, done it to 100 again, and this time I'm using my organic wholemeal Dove's Farm. Organic is your counsel of excellence because the yeasts and stuff, it has more microbes in it, so it grows better. I've lost my spoon. Okay, so the same thing exactly. You'll find every flour you use, the paste comes out to a different, comes out to a different consistency. Why did that happen? Just a minute. Right, it wasn't on 0, so off I go again. I didn't set it to 0. That's it, 0. Right, off I go again. Okay, and up to 100 again with wholemeal. Every flour, even the same bag, the same rate, the water absorbs at a different rate. And eventually you kind of get a feel for what it's like. And also, it doesn't really matter if it's a bit wetter or a bit drier. Well, that's 102 grams. Okay, I'm going to make it the same as the other one as much as I can. Take a little bit out. There's 100 grams. Now, once again, this is the wholemeal flour. Pour it in carefully. It goes over the top so quickly. So we're making this together, making this up. Oh no, it's slowly, slowly. Don't worry if you get it wrong. It will mature at a different rate depending on how wet it is. There we are, that's 201. Here's my chopstick. Give it an all. Oh, you see, this is lumpier somehow and a different consistency. It's the wholemeal. The organic wholemeal. Good old stir. There's the rubbish around the sides. You know, it will get stuck to the sides. Good old stir. It's such a lovely wheaty smell coming out. Nothing's happened yet, it just smells of wheat. So I'm just going to scrape it down. You see it's all around the sides. You might be neater than me. Scrape it down, don't worry too much, leave it there, don't worry that it's a bit dirty. Again, there's now flour, so stir it again. Stir in that loose flour. There's some stuff on the edges. My elastic band to mark the side of it. And approximately 24 hours. It's very forgiving. Remember, sourdough comes from an age where they didn't have ovens, they didn't have thermometers. Goodness knows what the flour was like. So that's wholemeal and that's starter. All right, now I'm putting that on here, again on my seedling mat, which is my wonderful figure for the. What these are some I'm going to start using in a minute. That was one I can put up photos in a minute. I've been away for 2 weeks. These were both sitting in the fridge, both different starters. This one had this black stuff on the top, which they call hooch. It's just basically alcohol. And there's nothing wrong. What you've got to watch out for is if your starter starts going lurid colours. The black liquid on top is fine. That one's grown much, much quicker. I this is my second feeding from bringing it to life since yesterday. That's the other one. It's barely grown at all from a second feeding. How? I don't know why, but you know, it's a live process. So this is what we're doing now. This is day one. Forget those. I'm going to make some bread with that one, I think, later on, because that's ready to go. That one, I don't know what I'll do with it. And there we are. That's day one of our starter. One with rye and one with wholemeal. Good luck, ladies. And gentlemen, if you're there as well. Bye-bye.